This is a detailed review of the UEI UTLDM2. Now, one thing about this multimeter that I should mention is that it is not true RMS, and it is a little on the expensive side. It's basically $60 is what I paid for it, $59.95. That being said, though, it could still potentially be a good choice depending on what country you're in and what else you're able to get for, roughly that amount of money. If you don't do AC measurements at all, then the true RMS part's really not that important, so this might still be a decent choice for you. It does feel pretty rugged. It has a separate holster. One of the few that does. So, it has a 6,000 counts display resolution. Its basic DC accuracy is 0.5% plus 2 counts. It'll measure frequency to 10 megahertz, capacitance to 60,000 microfarad, which is excellent, and it'll measure resistance to 60 megaohms. Now, another thing to note, it does not have a relative function, and that's sort of something that almost everything in this price range does have, so that's kind of crappy. And it doesn't allow you to manual range, and that's not as big of a deal as not having relative, but it's still kind of something that you would hope that it would have that it doesn't, so just worth noting. Okay, so as far as packaging and all that stuff, it came with a multimeter, it came with the probes, it came with a manual, but yeah, it's just folded paper crap, so if you want to call that a manual, fine, but I don't consider that to be a manual. It also comes with this proprietary K-type thermocouple, so I mean, at least it includes it, and at least it has the ability to measure temperature, so yeah, I'd prefer the adapter type, but at least included it. So, as far as physical build quality, it feels very solid, very rugged, and it's got this really thick, rubberish holster, and I like it. It's pretty good. It feels tough. It feels like it could take some pretty serious abuse. Now, whether it'll survive a drop test or not, that's soon to come. We'll find out. But yeah, at first glance, I think it feels pretty tough. As far as probes, being multicolored, they look a little cooler than your average plastic Chinese probes. I'm not saying that this is a Chinese brand necessarily, but I'm just saying compared to the Chinese ones, they look a little nicer having some extra color on the probes themselves. Strain relief, it's got strain relief, but I'm just curious if it's going to fray right here. So yeah, that I'm not sure about, but yeah, they feel kind of cheap and plasticky. They're relatively pointy. They're probably average-ish, maybe a little pointier than average. I don't know. It's one of those things that's really hard to kind of explain. They don't feel needle sharp, but they feel pointy, if that makes any sense. The cable is not very flexible at all. Not really going to complain too much about that, though. It's not that big of a deal. The cables are rated and branded, which is good. And just your standard 90-degree plugs, and these actually have much better strain relief on them than the probe side. So probes, average-ish. Okay, as far as kickstand, it's a little difficult to get out because it has a tab on both sides that gets stuck behind the holster. That being said, it's not the hardest to get out, so it's not terrible. It seems a little flimsy, and it's relatively stable. It's really not that bad, and I'm able to push the buttons without it falling over. So kickstand, I'd say, is pretty decent. I'd say it's maybe a little above average. Okay. Whoops. So let's talk about range switch feel. It's really, really light, but kind of like the Uni-T. It's kind of got that quiet but smooth feel. So it's not bad. Yeah, it feels a lot like the Uni-T one the more I use it. So I'm really curious. Maybe Uni-T could be the OEM for this. I don't know. But yeah, as far as feel, it's very light. So maybe it'll wear out in the future. But yeah, I'm sure you'd probably get a new multimeter by the time that would you would get to that point. But yeah, range switch is fine. Display. So this is, I forgot to mention, overall this is a very small multimeter. I have small girly hands and you can see that this multimeter is not very big. So despite being small, the display, well, yeah, it's pretty small too. But its contrast is excellent. And it's got normal proportion digits, which I like. To me, it's easier to read that way. It's got the auto power off symbol. I think if you hold function when you turn it on, yeah, it disables it, and I believe it's 30 minutes, so that's gonna suck. Waiting for that to turn off while we're getting to that part of the review. But yeah, and being 6,000 counts, that's nice. It's a little better than the 4,000 counts ones, and has a dedicated backlight button, which I love. And it is extremely bright. So let me do that. So you can't see it. Now you can. So as you can see, the backlight is very, very good. It's slightly hot spotted on the right side, but not too bad. And it's extremely bright, even for the most part, except for the just slight hotter spot on the right side. Oh, but unfortunately it's ruined by the fact that it turns off after about 10 seconds. I hate that. I wish I would just leave it on, and then if I decide to destroy my batteries by leaving the backlight on all the time, let me. I'm the owner of the thing. I'm the one that buys the batteries for it. I hate when companies decide that for me, but what can you do? And maybe it's longer than 10. That may be like 15 seconds, but still. But it does have one, and it does have a dedicated button, so even if it turns off quickly, at least I can just turn it right back on with a single button push. So I gotta give it a little bit of credit where it's due. So let's check out the battery and fuse situation. So, oh, I remember this one. So you have to take the holster off, or no? Oh, okay. So if I remember correctly, I have to take this plate off with this screw to get to the batteries. But to take the whole unit down, you have to take the holster off. But you can't take the holster off without taking this off first, which is, so it's kind of interesting. Okay, so the good news is it's a machine screw going into a nut that is molded into the chassis. Downside, it's crappy 9-volt using a horrendously crappy vinyl soft battery snap. I hate them. They just, I mean, look at that. This is a brand new unit and it's already starting to break. I hate those. If you're gonna use a snap, use the hard plastic ones. Don't go cheap and get the vinyl ones. It just drives me insane. I mean, obviously, I'd still prefer solid battery terminals, but yeah, if I had to choose, I'd prefer the hard snap. But whatever. No fuse access, but at least you can get to the battery using just a single machine screw. So it's okay. But well, I think it's time to go ahead and just pull the stupid holster off of there and see what's going on inside the unit. Okay, so I got the screws out, and they're actually, considering how small the unit is, they're actually pretty big size self-tappers. So yeah, it could be a lot worse than that, that's for sure. But yeah, would be better if they were machine screws, but yeah. No shielding. So it's got ceramic fuses, but they're not the really big beefy kind. Looks like 3 PTCs, a really weak looking 10 amp current shunt. I don't know, it just looks smaller gauge than what I'm used to seeing, but I guess it's probably fine. I mean, I'm sure that'll do beyond 10 amps, but yeah. Other than that, I don't see any other form of input protection, at least on this side of the board, but this has some really low ratings compared to some of the other models. So, yeah. Not a lot going on this board. And I don't know if I can see that. Is that upside down? I can't see what that is, so hopefully that shows up in the camera. Yeah, there's really not a lot going on this board. I mean, obviously, well, yeah, I'm guessing this is also driving the display because I see those coming around in a row. But yeah, I guess we'll flip it over and see what's on the other side. Okay, so I think I got it. Apart. So there are the buttons. Here's the back side of the range switch. Doesn't look like the camera's wanting to focus. Yeah, not a whole lot going on this side of the board at all. And yeah, battery snap goes through. So this side is, the strain relief. Yeah, this is a really basic design, and it's not true RMS, and being slightly more expensive, it's kind of tough to recommend this one. And input protection's a little lacking, but it is probably the lowest CAT rating of all of them, so yeah, it's just not a terrible meter. I guess I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but I'll go ahead and, to be thorough, I'll pull these screws out and remove the LCD unit so you can see behind it. There's the LCD itself. There's the diffuser, and yeah, that is an excellent diffuser. It's one single SMD LED on this side, and it barely had a hot spot on the right side, and with this one single diffuser it was able to get a nice even backlight across it, so good design. And just the old zebra strip. Yeah, so it looks like the ones that were in a row on the other side obviously come straight through those vias, and then the ones that connect to these pads come through vias over here, and then there's just traces on this side that run over to the appropriate spots. Hopefully I can get this back together correctly. But yeah, I'm gonna get this thing back together and we will take some measurements with it and see if it's worth $60 or not. Alright, now that we've got it back together, I'm going to go ahead and do some voltage measurements. So we'll start with my 5 volt reference. Hey, is right on the money pretty much. And as you can notice, being a 6,000 counts display resolution, you get an extra digit to the right of the decimal point as long as you're below 6 volts. So that's excellent. Okay, let's see how the continuity tester is. Really good. Honestly, yeah, that's about as good as it gets. Yeah, I mean, it could be a hair quicker. It's not quite, like the 500 nanoseconds or whatever the Fluke one is. Actually, it's probably microseconds. Nanoseconds, I think, would be a little absurd. But yeah, it's really quick. I mean, you see them hit, and then there's almost no delay, and then it beeps. So yeah, the continuity tester on this is very good. Now let's go back to resistance measurement mode. I could already tell that the auto ranging is going to be slow, but here we go. Yeah, it's very slow, so that kind of sucks. Let's see what the auto range, no, not the auto range, but the display update rate is like. That's actually very quick. So that's actually, wow, is that 4 a second? That might be like 4 a second. That is very good. That's one of the best I think I've seen out of the bunch. So excellent display update rate for the resistance range. Time to see if its diode test has high enough voltage to light up an LED. It does. Holy crap. It lights it up very brightly and shows a voltage on the display. I think that might be one of the only ones that's actually showed a voltage for the higher power super bright white. So excellent, and there's no reason to test the lower forward voltage ones because, well, if it works on this, it'll work on the other ones. Okay, so this will supposedly measure capacitance to 60,000 microfarad, but I always like to see just in case if any of the $50 ones will measure into the picofarad range. Oops, could help if I were on capacitance. Nope. Okay, let's see if it'll at least measure down to 100 nanofarad. Yes, it will. Alright, let's go for broke and see if it'll do this 4700 microfarad electrolytic. And I like that the display cleared and the little decimal points moving around. It shows me that it is actually doing something. That is fast. That's very fast for how big this is. So yeah, I'd have to say, despite this not having true RMS, the measurements seem to be pretty accurate. The display update rate's really fast. Yeah, it's really not that bad, which makes me kind of want to. It makes me consider buying one of their slightly higher models that does have true RMS, and then just see how they are. I'm really curious. Let's see about that. Oh, actually, it's the same range. I forgot. I don't like. That's one thing I don't like is when milliamps, microamps is shared with a voltage, because it's really easy to blow a fuse that way. But anyway, I have it set to microamps. And we are going to measure my 1 milliamp precision current source. That is pretty much dead on the money. That is awesome. So yeah, this thing is proving to be really, really accurate. So I'm really impressed with that. That's kind of the thing. It's only 0.5% plus 2 digits, and some of the other ones had higher accuracy ratings, but as you can see, this one's actually measuring closer than some of those other ones were. So accuracy rating doesn't always mean everything. A lot of manufacturers will get them just inside the tolerance windows of being, you know, well, within the accuracy rating, and then they just ship it out. Which means if it drifts even a little bit, it's going to be out already. Where a lot of the better companies, they'll make sure they get it right in the middle of the tolerance range. So they'll try to get it dead on. And so yeah, so far I'm pretty impressed with this thing for being, you know, a little expensive and missing some features like relative mode and true RMS. Oh, you know, that's one thing I did measure is measure some resistors. So I got some precision resistors. There's 1K. Yep. 10K. Yep. 100K. Yep. One thing I didn't do those. Well, with most of these I haven't. The reason with a lot of these I don't. Okay, sorry. I can't speak. The reason I don't rel out the resistance of the leads on a lot of these is because whenever you use rel, well, obviously this one doesn't even have relative, so we wouldn't be able to, but with a lot of these, whenever you use a relative function, it locks you into the current range it's in. It's really freaking annoying, and it makes the review take a lot longer than necessary, because I would have to manually range it to the correct range and then measure it after I rel it out, and yeah, I just couldn't be bothered. It'll still give you a really good idea, and there's not a lot of resistance in, you know, just your average set of probes. Not enough for us to really care about. Now, if we were measuring some really expensive multimeters, it could be worth it. And a lot of the nicer multimeters will actually let you auto range while you have relative offset going on. So I think it is time to measure frequency. Okay, so it says it'll measure frequency to, it's picking up the mains. It says it'll pick up frequency all the way up to 10 megahertz, so I'm just going to go straight for 10 and we'll see what happens. Alright, here's 10 megahertz. Right on the money. And see, that's the thing. A lot of these have been off a little bit on each reading, and this one has been almost dead on with most of the ranges, so it's pretty impressive. And just for shits and grins, let's just crank it up some more and see if it'll go higher than what they advertise. Let's try 20. Yep, let's try 30. Yep, let's try 50. Look at that. Now it's starting to read out a little bit, but Alright, I have it connected to my bench power supply, which I have set to 9 volts to basically simulate a 9 volt battery. And I have it connected to my 10 volt voltage reference, and I'm just going to start turning the voltage down on my bench power supply 100 millivolts at a time, and we'll see when or if a low battery light ever comes on, or indicator. And then we'll see if it ever gets to the point where the reading starts to fluctuate, or if it'll basically shut itself off before it gets to that point. So here we go. Eight volts even. Okay, I'm going back up because there we go. So I'm at 7.3. Yeah, so it looks like 7.4, it's fine, and then at 7.3 the low battery light in the top right corner comes on after a second or so being in this voltage. At this voltage, I don't know. I wish I could just leave the backlight on permanently, but it shuts itself off. So I'm just going to keep going down. I'm at 7 volts even. There's 6 volts even. 5 volts, let me just make sure it'll turn back on. Yep. There's 4 volts. Yep. There's 3 volts even. Yep. Huh, okay. I went all the way down to 2 volts and then something weirded out. Okay, so I'm back up to 2.4 and it turned itself back on, but it's reading 1 count out. So let me go up. Yeah, so once it gets below 3 volts, it starts to go 1 count out. So I'm at 3 even. Now I'm going to go down to 2.2. And then you see it go 1 count out. So that kind of sucks, but it's only 1 count, so it's not that big of a deal. It would still be within what they rate it for. So we'll just say 3 volts, and that's still going to be well below what... I mean, if you go down to 3 volts, you basically sucked like 98% of the juice out of the battery anyway, so I'll just put 3 volts even for the cutoff. Alright, so now I'm going to hook it through my Voltcraft multimeter so we can see what the current draw is. Okay, so I got it hooked up through my Voltcraft, and it looks like it's drawing about 2.1 milliamps, and I set my bench power supply back up to an even 9 volts. It's got a pretty bright backlight, even though it's just one single LED. Let's see what the current draw is when we turn that on. Holy moly, yeah, you can tell it's a bright LED. It goes up to 30. So I should mention why I have this sitting sideways. It's because of glare. But that's the nice thing about OLED. It's got a crazy viewing angle, and the contrast is ridiculous, and on camera it's just... really, you can't get a better screen for showing off your projects on YouTube if you need to show voltages or current. Yeah, so I believe, was it 30 minutes auto power off? So I guess I'm going to go kill 30 minutes, and then we'll see what the sleep state current draw is. And then I'll also come back with an estimated battery life for you. But being 2.1 milliamps on a 9 volt, I can't remember. I think that'd be somewhere like 300 hours or something, which is pretty good. But yeah, I'll be back after power's off. Alright, so apparently the manual is wrong. Instead of 30 minutes, it was only 15 minutes for auto power off, which is interesting. That's the, second multimeter that was wrong about auto power off in the manual, but whatever. Either way, it saved me 15 minutes, so it looks like it's drawing anywhere from 2 to 4 microamps, which is excellent. And I guess, as Dave Jones would say, that's half a bee's dick. Let's see if it'll... Huh! Despite only drawing 2 microamps, it responded to the soft button, so cool. Yeah, I did the math, and it should get at least 300 hours of battery life on a fresh 9-volt battery. So yeah, it's not too bad at all for a 9-volt. I think it's time to put all this crap away, and then we'll do a summary. So what do I think of the UEI UTLDM2? Well, the price, it's slightly on the high side, and for being $10 more than the $50 mark that we're trying to hit, it's not true RMS, so it makes it a little hard to justify a multimeter that's kind of on the higher end price-wise that's not true RMS. And on top of not being true RMS, it's also missing the relative function. It's got hold, but you know, it's just the crappy freeze the screen type, unless... Nope. On the Unity UT61E, if you held that down, it did the peak hold or auto hold type, kind of like how the Fluke does it. So this one obviously doesn't do that, which sucks, but yeah. That being said though, if you don't do any kind of AC measurements, or even if you do, if you don't need it to be very accurate, and wherever you live, whatever country you live in, if this is probably the best multimeter you can get for the money, it's not really that bad of a meter. It'll do everything you would really need, I don't know, for electronics work. The display is great. The battery life is pretty good. It's very rugged and has a really awesome removable holster. Yeah, and you know, everything we've measured, it showed that it was pretty accurate, you know? So yeah, it's hard for me to say go out and buy this one, but it's one of those where if you can't buy some of the other ones that I recommend over this, like the, you know, for example, the Unity UT61E, it's 22,000 counts, 0.1% plus 2 counts. It blows this one out of the water when it comes to measurement ranges. It has relative function. It'll do the peak hold or touch hold. Doesn't have a backlight, but that's probably the only bad thing I can really say about that multimeter. It just blows this one out of the water. And that's $12 cheaper than this one. So it's kind of one of those things where if you can't get that multimeter, then I would say that this one wouldn't be a bad choice. Just keep in mind that it is not true RMS, and it doesn't have relative function. So that's, I mean, it's not a make or break thing. You can live without a relative function, but it's nice to have, and there really isn't any reason to get one without it, considering how many multimeters in the $50 range have that. So yeah, overall though, it's not a bad multimeter. I can't fault it. It's just, I think there are better options in the $50 range, but it's one of those things though where you gotta weigh your personal metrics and decide what's best for you. And if some of the other multimeters are unattainable in the country you live in, this might actually be your best choice. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful to someone out there, and yeah, see you in the next video. Bye.